Thanks for joining me. It was an act without honour, according to John Howard, and who can argue? The Liberal hatchet men ambushed him right on 8:30 last Monday night, just when all right-minded citizens should be settling down to watch Four Corners. I've no doubt that's what the Liberal leader himself was doing, and I'm sure that at least one of his erstwhile friends and colleagues who confronted him that night would rather have been doing the same. Austin Lewis, the Liberals' deputy leader in the Senate, had told John Howard on the very morning of the coup that he had turned the corner and was looking like a Prime Minister. Lewis, regarded as a Howard supporter, is painfully aware of the apparent duplicity of his role. But he insists he had no idea of what was ahead when he offered those words of encouragement to his doomed leader. Normally, that would seem an incredible explanation. But these were not ordinary circumstances. As you're about to see, this was an operation of almost military precision conducted by cool, calculating conspirators. Marion Wilkinson explains how the plot thickened.
There's always in politics enormous chance. Anything can happen. It's the greatest game of chance I know. But I never saw in the last 4 weeks of it where it was really going to fail if everybody held firm to basic principles of security.
Liberal frontbencher John Moore, one of the key backroom boys who pulled off last week's dramatic leadership coup in Canberra.
And that security had to be the hallmark. You didn't go outside into risky areas.
For 3 months, Moore and 4 trusted Liberal colleagues single-mindedly plotted to deliver the Liberal Party leadership to Andrew Peacock for a second time. They effected one of the most professional political operations seen in the party for some years, and they took almost every political commentator by surprise.
Ladies and gentlemen, obviously by your attendance here, you're aware that there have been some changes in the upper echelons of the parties on our side of politics.
The Canberra Press Gallery was in a state of shock. They were given virtually no warning of Peacock's challenge. And unknown to them, this very press conference they were attending had been rehearsed by Peacock the night before the leadership change, with the help of media consultants lined up at least 2 weeks earlier. That's how confident Peacock was of winning.
Beg your pardon?
How long have you been considering it?
Well, it was really, in essence, a draft. People came to me through last week. At first, I gave little attention to it, but by the end of the week, the numbers were so substantial that I felt compelled to talk with Senator Cheney on the weekend, which I did, and we had discussions with Senator Lewis yesterday, and it was quite obvious that there was a substantial body of opinion, and we told Mr Howard yesterday evening.
Peacock was certainly drafted, but that draft was not a spontaneous call from the party last week. The men who planned Peacock's coup, his most trusted colleagues, tell their story publicly tonight for the first time and reveal the months of intense manoeuvring that finally ensured their leader's victory. The core group, as they were called, included John Moore from Queensland, Wilson Tuckey and Peter Shack from West Australia, Senator Chris Public from New South Wales, and David Jull, also from Queensland. While their planning began last year, for months they were stymied by the political ambitions of brewing magnate and Carlton Football Club president John Elliott. As Liberal Party president, Elliott read the warning signs over Howard's leadership in October last year and planned his own move into federal politics. His threatened arrival in Canberra split the party into 3 camps: Howard's, Peacock's and Elliott's.
There was always a group who felt, I used to call them the cargo cultists, who felt that the solution could come from outside the party, but had never addressed the problem of how we'd get that person in. Remembering that even if a by-election situation could be created, the government had the final say as to when that might be held. But that for a long time was a refuge for people who felt that making a change was too difficult, and they were able to live with the comfort of somebody, a messiah, I guess, coming to save us.
But in February this year, party officials attending a federal executive meeting in Adelaide realised that Elliott had buried his political ambitions. Embroiled in a billion-dollar takeover battle in England, Elliott was finally dealt out of the leadership equation. John Moore left Adelaide to to inform Peacock. Can I ask you then what you felt when you left that meeting in Adelaide? What went through your mind about, one, John Elliott's ambitions, and two, what that meant for the parliamentary party up here?
Well, it meant, I think, that from the parliamentary scene, that John Elliott's options of coming to Canberra were dead, and that as a consequence of that, there were a group of people who were his supporters. And I think that they were probably then in limbo, and the problems were in the political perceptions of the time. High interest rates, balance of payments, the government in disarray at that stage, and we appear to be going nowhere.
So when the Elliott candidacy was laid to rest, things began to move again?
Certainly. That's when some people, those closest to him, who of course were clearly not Howard supporters, shifted across, and we weren't in the business of collecting numbers in large quantities at many stages. It was just a hard slogging task of individually approaching people, talking to them, having others talk to them, and gradually gain their support. So we had a small block of people come to us.
February was the turning point. Members of the core group gave themselves 3 months to plan and penciled in May 9 as their potential D-Day. The May 9 date, approximately what time was that worked out and why?
It was worked out at the beginning of this calendar year as we got back together and were in Canberra again. It was a date we had to set as a target for ourselves, but the criteria for it was primarily to have a normal Liberal Party meeting day as late as possible in this session. We knew that gave us more time. We were too concerned to select, for instance, the last Tuesday because the government might change its plans and cut the Parliament early, and earlier in the year that was a distinct possibility. But primarily it was also so that we could give ourselves as much time outside the Parliament to set our own agenda in terms of publicising our new leader.
Hello, what's the money there?
It's yours.
Whose is that?
We were paying you to come and sit with us and have your photo taken.
Oh.
Said that was
At this stage, Peacock knew that neither he nor the Liberal Party could afford another public leadership struggle.
Very nice of you to be here, thank you. Yeah, absolutely essential.
We're wondering if you're going to tell us any secrets, but
Oh no, we're just having a Liberal luncheon. Liberal luncheon.
Service Paradise Golf Club?
Golly, that's a long while ago.
8 years ago.
It was Peacock's ambition to lead the party again, but his last abortive attempt to take on his leader had severely damaged his credibility. This time, Peacock's numbers men knew they had to be certain before moving, and that meant planning with the utmost secrecy.
Well, not with those things around.
Well, you do the party an enormous amount of harm if these operations don't succeed. You do it an equal amount of harm if it's carried out in a dragged-out manner, such as the Fraser-Snedden event. Because of that, we were very conscious of the fact that no move could be made until such time as the numbers were there, and we were very careful that in the approach to it that no one was alarmed, or anybody who wasn't with us, well, we didn't go anywhere near.
Those that were being consulted were not generally brought into a group so that they had any other idea of the number of other people that might be supporting us. We tended to do our best to keep people isolated themselves. But secondly, at times, I guess, by downright lying. It was quite surprising the number of times that individual media people picked up a sniff that X had crossed. And I remember one fellow ringing me to tell me the absolute truth in that regard. And I, of course, which is something I don't do often, but I just had to tell him it was a load of rubbish. Hadn't heard a word about it. And he probably will have his revenge on me one day in that regard. But we just literally kept hosing it down. But we were fortunate that the media had started to believe their own perception, that there was nobody in the Liberal Party that could be turned to. And more importantly, that there wasn't enough of us that were smart enough to put together the package that we did. And I was quite happy to encourage them in that perception. and because we didn't want their intervention at that time. It would have been disastrous. We couldn't have handled it.
Well, what had to be laid down was an understanding that nobody breached any of the discussions which were underway.
And at what level breaches? Staff, journalists?
Oh, well, I mean, I think it would be fair to say that my own staff, my own family, had no idea what was going on.
In that period of time, from February until last week, can you remember a period when the numbers started to go your way more significantly than they had?
I can't remember any precise date, but I would have thought that the rough numbers hadn't changed much in the period February, March into April. But then from April onwards, things deteriorated for us in Coalition, I think, and that happened.
What do you put that down to, that real movement in the April period?
I think the Victorian drama, the handling of that, especially the press reaction to certain aspects, and the impact that it was having on the electorate. I mean, in Queensland, we've had to fight on two fronts for a long time, and you get to know when things are possible, when things are not. And I think in the end, people were saying, look, it's just not on. You know, politics is about winning, and all the members of the opposition want to win, and they were feeling that they couldn't. And some of the Victorian problem, not all, some, is to do with the sense of frustration in losing.
He talks about an increasingly totalitarian right-wing party without the traditional small L values. Is there any grain of truth in what he says, do you think?
No, I think it's very unfortunate. And
Howard's public handling of the Victorian drama, as Moore calls it, was woeful. Prominent Liberal wet and Peacock supporter, Ian Macphee, was being challenged for preselection in his seat of Goldstein. The developing brawl in the Victorian party quickly began to reflect on Howard's leadership, but Howard doggedly refused to intervene.
Well, I don't think I should intervene because there's a very long-standing understanding between the parliamentary party and the organisation in the Liberal Party. The organisation says to the parliamentary party, you can run policy, we won't impose a rigid caucus system on you, you can allow your members to cross the floor if you wish, but when it comes to choosing pre-selections and choosing who your number will comprise, we'll decide that.
While Howard procrastinated, Peacock supporters were literally drafting the battle plans, plotting in extraordinarily fine detail the leadership coup.
We should have more competition.
Certain of our number who had the organisational abilities set out and put together a program, an actual written program, of the sort of things we needed to do and address, and that included contacting people inside and outside our group. We wanted people to respond publicly from the private sector on this issue, and we needed to get them supportive and ready to say the right thing. We needed certain specialists by way of people whom we could bring in to handle that day, publicists and others. We needed to know consequently where they would be, and if they displaced other people out of someone's office, where they could be placed. All that sort of detail, that fine detail, was done. And of course the other issue was, if we've won an election on a Tuesday morning of a sitting week, what happened to the parliamentary program that afternoon? And considering my special skills, I was given that job. And on the day previous, I had identified people who would be asking questions at question time, people who would participate, and the subject matter of the matter of public importance debate. We were determined that having won the day, we weren't going to be branded a mob of buffoons within a few hours by having started to stumble in the Parliament. Funnily enough, when we delivered the letter to Madam Speaker, which is necessary for the matter of public importance, the officer there expressed extreme surprise because she didn't think she'd be getting one that day.
There was a strategy put together for the 5 days, which ran from probably the, what we call it, D+1, D+2 to D-1, D-2. The reason for that was that there were a large number of events, all of which had to be covered, all of which had flexibility in them, such as the necessity for planning the press conference and what was to be said, and the need to run Andrew through that, and therefore you needed professional advice on that. The question of having Wilson Tuckey provide the questions and the MPI for the Tuesday, having that planned in place, and to have a plan in relation to who outside Canberra should be contacted, and to have a plan also in mind for ensuring that we got a chief executive lined up on the day after, which we did last night.
The written plans were probably prepared, in the previous month to 6 weeks. Their expedition was all about a sensible timing arrangement, but for instance, people had been contacted outside of our group in the private sector weeks before. My final planning was done on the Monday because there were just a matter of that it could be done in that time.
At what stage did you decide that you had to put those plans in place and that you'd have enough time to do it?
I thought the plans for that, in my view, was probably a fortnight before, in which they had to be committed to paper. There were several attempts at it, and put it down, thought of it again, that was wrong, replaced it.
Each of the 5 members of the core group had a copy of the written plans, some covering different tasks for different players. Peacock was shown the plans, according to Moore, about the time they were drawn up, undercutting the impression Peacock gave last Tuesday night that he was drafted in the last days.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to give it to you as it happened. I mean, when I flew out of Canberra last Thursday, I did not think that we would be having a leadership change today.
He knew the sort of general structural thing we ran through with him, what was on the program.
This was on the document that was drawn up. And when did you run through that with him?
I can't really remember the precise day. I mean, but I spoke to him about it, and we had a look at it as a group.
At the time the document was drawn up?
Oh, about then. Certainly not beforehand. I mean, a lot of thought went into the document for a start, and see it wasn't just snap, bang, it was there. It had to be put down and tried again, and eventually we were happy with it, and that was it.
If there was going to be a change in leadership, it had to be clear and decisive. It couldn't afford to be messy, and it had to regard the sensibilities of the individuals involved. So on that basis, whenever anybody came to us and asked us to look at the possibility, we would infrequently and informally talk to one another and say, this seems to be the case, what do you think? And over a period of weeks, we were able to resolve that almost 40 people, and this was about a fortnight before the leadership change, had come to a very clear view that a change needed to take place.
On Thursday night, less than 5 days before D-Day, the core group sat down to look at the numbers. They knew that Andrew Peacock wanted at least 40 votes, but they had to be rock solid, or rolled gold in the jargon of the numbers men. But even at this late stage, John Moore was not convinced that they had those 40 locked up.
No, not at all. Thursday night was just a general confirmation that Tuesday was it, but we didn't have the numbers. We didn't have the roll gold ones in the can. It wasn't until Monday we really had them in the can.
How many did you have in the can on Thursday night?
Well, in my view, the same as we'd always had for probably 2 months.
But that wasn't the 40 roll gold.
No, there were a couple of lucky breaks over the weekend.
So things did move right through the weekend.
Oh, everything's moving all the time. It's a very, very fluid business in politics, and anything can happen.
It was the defection of Fred Cheney, Senate Liberal leader and Howard's friend, that locked up the rolled gold numbers for Peacock over the weekend. Peacock offered Cheney his support to become the new deputy leader.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we may not have approached him, and that it was a political coincidence, and that he decided to join. And our general view was that a Peacock Cheney ticket was a very saleable one. And after all, I mean, the hallmark had to be to win. In win not here only, but to win the public, to win the election. And therefore a Peacock Cheney ticket was seen as our best communicating ticket, the one which would be able to sell the Liberal Party policies. There's nothing wrong with our policies, it's the salesmanship. And those two were deemed to be the best communicators.
When we sat down on Monday morning at 7 a.m, we were on red alert. You know, we were on an irreversible course and we couldn't back off, but we had huge confidence on the day. And of course, in this case, it became evident with 40 votes and a potential 45 votes to handle. That was beyond the resources of the group of five, particularly considering what the other responsibilities some of us had. And I made the suggestion that we should have these booth captains, and they had to be very trusted people from within the outside of our group who nevertheless were people with contacts and connections who could just make sure that everything was moving along. And so we prepared a list of all our voters, we prepared a list of their phone numbers and private and within the Parliament, everything necessary. And then we brought those people in on the Monday at 1 o'clock, and they were each given a list which we'd prepared of people whom they were to maintain contact with. And that contact had to take account that as soon as we went and told Howard that, of course, people would be being contacted by him, and we were asking them to make sure they didn't answer their phone, that they didn't talk to reporters. And the simplest way to do that was just don't answer the phone. And what is more, those people then had to make sure that people were there in the morning. We talked seriously of one bloke who was known to sleep in. If we took that to account, who would make sure he was going to be there? And, you know, there was a great degree of the personalities of individuals that had to be taken into account. Doubtfuls that might just be sat next to by someone whom we trusted better, and to be shepherded away from those whom we knew were the people most likely to be working hardest for John.
At 8:30 on Monday night, Andrew Peacock, Fred Cheney and the party's deputy leader in the Senate, Austin Lewis, went to John Howard's office with the message that in 12 hours Howard would be challenged for the party leadership. Peacock was so confident that that same night, hours before the first votes were even cast, he rehearsed his victory press conference with two media advisers that John Moore had lined up at least a fortnight before.
Well, we had the pre-night exercise in which on Monday night we had the two specialists to run Peacock through in terms of the press. We went through a series of questions. We knew what would have to occur in terms of the management of the office. We had people here to move into the office to handle the media in the short term. We judged what had happened on Tuesday as far as Parliament was concerned. Frankly, I was surprised the Labor Party didn't do anything at all. I thought they were caught by surprise.
We didn't want an abortive coup. We didn't want the form of bloodletting that had gone in a build-up where the whole campaign was fought out in the media. That was not possible. We had to win quietly and, as I said, with secrecy and certainty. So that was uppermost, that we couldn't afford to lose. We couldn't afford, in Andrew Peacock's case, to have him lose. And so they were all very important to us, and a lot of attention was given to that. But it's quite funny, as far as I'm concerned, that one of those who voted for Andrew Peacock told me later that he'd become so excited over this great event he was going to participate in tomorrow that he'd not slept all night. And I slept, and I walked into that party room, and my pulse didn't even move, and I'm a rather excitable person. By then I was just so confident.
The somewhat devious route to the Peacock throne. Marion Wilkinson was the reporter. Well, to the victors belong the spoils, but to the vanquished? John Howard was clearing out his city office today and farewelling the staff he must now shed. He's already taken a salary cut of some $50,000. Meanwhile, down in Melbourne, his old adversary Ian Macphee can hardly keep the smile from his face. He's getting a bigger office and staff, as well as a pay rise. It's a remarkable turnaround for a man who wasn't even wanted by the Liberals in his own seat of Goldstein just a couple of weeks back. As you heard from the coup organisers a moment ago, it was the turmoil surrounding particularly the Goldstein preselection that gave the Peacock camp its final impetus. Now it's their turn to help Macphee come back from the dead. Today he nominated, with his new leader's blessing, for the marginal seat of Deakin. Neil Mercer looks at the fluctuating fortunes of Ian Macphee, from wrung out wet to rising damp.
It's been, I think, the most cathartic and desirable experience the Liberal Party could have had, and it's given me a sense of our being able to win convincingly, govern well, and go on winning for real achievement for Australia. And so I have out of it a sense, for the first time since the early 80s, a sense of feeling that we can accomplish things for the good of the country.
Where do you think the party was going wrong up till a week ago?
Well, I think essentially it didn't have the unity, it didn't have a sense of purpose, didn't have a belief in itself that it could function as a team. And now it does. I'm sure you picked up the atmosphere in Parliament House at the end of the week. It's the first time since we lost in '83 that the overwhelming majority of parliamentarians in the opposition really felt united and really felt that we could win and that we would deliver the goods for the public when we did win.
Why is that?
Like his party, Ian Macphee is cock-a-hoop, and little wonder. Last Monday, his political career seemed in tatters. Today, his resurrection is almost complete. It was a remarkable week, and a remarkable comeback by a man who over the years has had his share of ups and downs.
Mr Howard's new front bench reflects a latent touch of ruthlessness in the Liberal leader. No member of the small L Liberal wet faction has survived. But joining Andrew Peacock on the back bench in the naughty boys' corner is fellow senior Liberal Ian Macphee, leader of the wet faction. Mr Macphee has been at loggerheads with his leader over communications.
It hasn't been the only disagreement between Mr Macphee, the party's leading small L Liberal, and Mr Howard.
Teamwork is absolutely essential on the front bench if you're to have it throughout the party, and I think that's a factor that everybody would understand.
As that's very, very close to being defamatory, I would like that fleshed out a bit more. I'd like to reply to that afterwards.
Yeah, sure, well...
Yeah.
Since his sacking from the front bench 2 years ago and the ascendancy of the so-called economic dries, Ian Macphee has looked increasingly lonely in a Liberal Party which, to many, was becoming more and more conservative.
It's a very strange life, I'll tell you, but somebody has to do it.
Ian Macphee has staved off all Labor challenges.
According to the voters, Ian Macphee has done it very well for 15 years in the Melbourne seat of Goldstein. But 9 days ago, he came under challenge in the pre-selection ballot by a member of the party's right wing, Professor David Kemp. In the weeks preceding the ballot, Ian Macphee cried foul.
There's been a lot of brand stacking going on. I don't intend to reveal the details of it at this stage, but there's been a lot of a dirty pool.
He lashed out at the young president of the Victorian Liberal Party, Michael Kroger, and at John Howard for not intervening in the pre-selection process.
Well, he's made it plain that he won't, and nominations closed today, so all of that's behind us.
Do you think he should have?
I think that he should have, but he's chosen not to, and that's his choice. I mean, the fact is that if you are going to expunge the most popular endorsed Liberal candidate, the one who wins the swing greater than the party each time, and in the last 2 elections I've won double the swing to the party in Victoria, then it's pretty high-risk politics in terms of the other seats which you want to win, and I would have thought that a leader would have been concerned about that.
And finally, you seem to place much more blame on the Victorian Liberal President, Michael Kroger, than on John Howard.
Yes, I think that's where the blame principally resides, and I have no doubt that if the Victorian President thought that there was any real branch resentment to me, which he now says to other people there is, that he should have rung me and said, look, you better have a look at this and mend the fences.
I don't necessarily want to see the back of Ian Macphee, but I'm not going to go around supporting him or any other sitting member who are facing re-endorsement under a fair and open system. Now, we believe in competition, John, and that's the fact of the Liberal Party. We're not prepared to allow any longer people to stay in seats and face no competition. Our electoral record is so bad that Ian and Andrew Peacock and any other member has to face a pre-selection, and they've got the confidence of the branches.
But he is a proven winner. He's doubled the vote. He represents, I suppose, the compassionate side of the Liberal Party. A lot of people support that.
Well, there are many other people who express concerns about the unfortunate side of Australian life.
The Liberal Party? Sorry, I have nothing more to say. Will you have a press conference tomorrow, Mr. No, I will not say anything for at least 2 days.
When Ian Macphee lost pre-selection, his political future looked as bleak as a Canberra winter.
Supported me and who believe in liberalism as I do.
Having been hung out to dry, he now says he'd been planning to go outside the Liberal Party.
The dry light of day, which of course will take at least 48 hours as far as I'm concerned.
If I'd considered anything, after the defeat last week, if Andrew hadn't been able to achieve what he's achieved this week, then I would certainly have considered standing as an independent Liberal in order to bring about the catharsis that has in fact occurred without doing that.
If you had stood as an independent Liberal, a lot of people would have said you were putting your self-interest ahead of the party's.
Yes, a lot of people would, but the real test would have been what public opinion thought. And a lot of people would have painted me immediately as a spoiler. But if they believe in competition and democracy, as they were saying, then of course they couldn't deny the right to give the public the choice of somebody else. And as it happens, that is not needed, and it would have been undesirable, but it may have been the course I had to take.
You must have come, or you did come very close to a disaster, in fact, didn't you, over Goldstein, if Macphee had eventually run as an independent?
No, I don't think we did.
You don't think him running as an independent would have been bad news for the Liberal Party?
I don't think he ever would have. I just think that was a bit of media talk. Ian has always been a loyal party member, and he's been around a long time. He says things from time to time which people don't like. I suppose we all do.
If you had stood as an independent, that could have well and truly ruined the Liberal Party's chances at the next election, really.
Precisely. I kept warning about that, but at the same time, the show of public support, which was demonstrated in so many ways by opinion polls, letters to editors, talkback radio, and just street petitions gathered at random, and television polls gathered at random, you couldn't deny that I was likely to win as an independent Liberal, and that would have then asked the Liberal Party to examine itself.
Do you think, though, you should have just accepted the competition, accepted the verdict of the party branches and kept quiet?
I don't believe so in my particular case, because the prevailing view of the pre-selection panel, which was very narrow, was so out of kilter with the prevailing view of the electorate that the party would, just by dropping me, have been doomed to lose the next election. If things had gone on without change, the signals that the dumping of Macphee would give would have been fatal to it, whereas what Andrew has now done is to heal all of those wounds in one great sweep. And so the signals now going out are incredibly positive.
While Ian Macphee was not the cause of John Howard's downfall, the brawl in Goldstein was symbolic of the flaws in John Howard's leadership and a catalyst for change.
How important is it, do you think, that the Macphee issue is resolved with Macphee remaining in the party? What sort of
I make no bones about it. I make no bones about it at all, that I am an admirer of Ian Macphee. He's a friend of mine. He's also served in very senior positions in my shadow ministries in the past. And well, let's take things one at a time at this stage. I will be having discussions with him, and well, come on. I want him to remain a member of the parliamentary party, and I'm not indicating any positions for anybody at all in advance of announcing the changes to my shadow ministry.
Ian Macphee's office.
Having been welcomed back into the fold by Andrew Peacock, the lobbying continued. Ian Macphee was still fighting for his political survival, trying to find another seat to contest at the next election.
Yes, Julie.
Just if I could just catch up on these messages that have come in this afternoon. There is one urgent one which I said, one media one, I said I'd get back to.
It was a week of behind-the-scenes negotiations, constant phone calls from friends, colleagues and former politicians, including Malcolm Fraser, all offering advice and support.
I'm not only preparing the speech for tomorrow, but I'm actually trying to negotiate for some way of staying in Parliament as a Liberal parliamentarian, and that's just too time-consuming to contemplate doing any interviews. I'm not doing any interviews.
No. Well, there are of course lots of other well wishes and phone calls, which you will return when you get some time, but I can handle those.
All right, then. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Back to work. Well, Nigel, perhaps I might see where you've got to and compare notes on this speech.
Midweek, and he's negotiating for his political future.
Oh, excellent.
On international issues.
Yes,
At the same time, with the help of his staff, he's drafting a key speech to the National Press Club. The fight for survival is almost won, but it isn't over yet.
Yes, but I'm sorry to leave so much of it to you, but I really just have no other way with all the interruptions. Otherwise I'll go in there without a speech done.
Yeah, well, it's 10 to 6 now, and we've only really got less than a few hours really to get prepared. I mean, we've got to work all tonight.
Yes.
And, I mean, tomorrow morning you'll just have to lock yourself away, basically.
Yes, I will. And, it's just so frenetic.
Anyway,
every half day is a long time.
I picked up this speech before that you made in 1987 called The Public Interest, The Forgotten Factor.
Yes.
Do you remember that one? It was
I do.
the Menzies...
Yes, well, frankly, I think one could say the call is just as justified now. I mean,
Menzies and Alfred Deakin, our second Prime Minister, are names that figure large in the philosophy of Ian Macphee. And that makes him an unusual politician because at the same time he's a supporter of feminist causes, a critic of Rupert Murdoch, in favour of Asian immigration. Some Liberal Party members think he's gone too far to the left, but he certainly wouldn't find any comfort in the ALP of the 1980s.
I mean, it's just...
well, that looks at the sort of corporate culture of the Hawke government and the concentration on self or private as against the public interest.
Thank you, baby.
Thursday lunchtime at the National Press Club, and the deal was virtually sealed.
I'm very well, Rob, very well indeed. Hi, Karen, Sal, great, thanks. See you. You too. And thanks for coming along.
Certainly Ian Macphee wasn't taking anything sitting down, and after pressing the flesh, he looked and sounded much more like a politician reborn.
I'd like to just say a few things about my vision for our country. For the economy, we know that structural change in the widest sense is essential.
Having come perilously close to leaving the party, he invoked the name of its founder.
People are tired of factional deals, of expediency of political machines, and they really want to have a say, which they think is now denied them by the corporate nature of current government decision-making. And I'm reminded again of a speech of Sir Robert Menzies nearly 50 years ago when he spoke of the forgotten people, and they're still forgotten. And he said then, they are the salary earners, shopkeepers, skilled artisans, professional men and women, farmers and so on. They are, in a political and economic sense, the middle class. They are, for the most part, unorganised and unself-conscious. They are envied by those whose special benefits are largely obtained by taxing them. They are not rich enough to have individual power. They are taken for granted by each political party in turn. They are not sufficiently lacking in individualism to be organised for that, and in these days, what we call pressure politics, but yet they are the backbone of the nation.
Tell me a little bit about how you got involved in politics in the first place. What are your earliest memories?
Well, one of our closest family friends was Eileen Furley, who was a foundation member of the Liberal Party and a great feminist, one of the most active women in a whole range of women's organisations, the League of Women's Voters and so forth. Now, she was almost like a second mother to me, and she had no children, and she and her husband were my parents' closest friends, and we were always at each other's homes, and I sat and listened to so much conversation about issues. I'm an issues person, and I think one of the reasons is that they were talking about current events, not just the game of politics, but the real issues that faced Australia. And it was very exciting. There were lots of politicians there on occasions, but there were business people, professional people, who were considering the issues facing the evolving Australia. And so I can remember, even at the age of 10 and 11, reciting to my parents the full list of Chifley's ministry, for example. And I remember so vividly the 1949 election campaign when Menzies won. And I followed it intensely all the way.
What did that Menzies victory mean in your household and to the people around that household?
Well, they very much saw themselves as the forgotten people. And I think that they were very much in the situation that most Australians are now.
Who are your political heroes? Is Menzies one of them?
Well, Menzies was one, and Deakin was another. I got to know Menzies towards the end of his life, before I went into Parliament and then subsequently. And I think both Deakin and Menzies were splendid Liberals who reflected their era and who were in many ways different from their image. But that's true of Malcolm Fraser as well. And Malcolm's austere appearance has shielded much of his genuine liberalism, but the things which Malcolm achieved that are enduring were concerning the environment and race relations in particular, and also progress in terms of equal opportunity for women. And I think all of them have contributed in their way, just as Andrew will in a very dramatically different way too.
And I thank them here because I haven't had the opportunity of speaking
Just days after falling from grace, Ian Macphee's career was resurrected.
I have had in the last 24 hours several discussions with the important leaders of the Liberal Party, obviously beginning with Andrew Peacock and Geoffrey Kennett in Victoria, with John Elliott, the Federal President, with Michael Kroger, the State President, and with other office bearers, including pre-selectors of the seat of Deakin. And I'm announcing to you today that I will be a candidate for pre-selection for the Liberal Party in the seat of Deakin. And if I was proud to have represented the seat of Goldstein, I think you'll readily understand the symbolic significance to me of representing the person whom I admire above all other Australian Prime Ministers, Alfred Deakin.
That was Thursday. 24 hours later, he's back in Melbourne with the Foreign Affairs portfolio, the one wanted by John Howard, stuck under his belt.
And you too.
He's come back on different terms for a lunch that a week ago would have been unimaginable. A lunch with the Victorian Party President, Michael Kroger, with whom he's been brawling for weeks.
I know the pyrrhic family very well, and so it's, you've chosen very well. Well, here's to the future. Success. Yes, this is what's been happening.
Well, the Herald today, brilliant front page article of a poll I did in Sydney last night. Sydney and Melbourne, only metropolitan. Liberals under Peacock 50%, Labor 41, and Democrats 9. That discounts the country influence of the National Party, so 9% up.
Well, the atmosphere in Canberra is magnificent, absolutely magnificent. There's a buoyancy that we haven't seen really since probably about 1980, I would say.
What are your relations like with Ian Macphee today?
Well, they're very good.
Better than a few days ago?
Better than a few days ago, yeah. Well, I mean, look, in the heat of the battle, obviously you're going to go through difficult periods. Mr Keating and Mr Hawke have, but they work well and effectively together.
Just a few days ago, you were at each other's throats, and now you're shaking hands. Do you understand how people could look at that and say that's extremely hypocritical?
I do understand that, and I've heard people saying that on radio programs. I can only say that politics is unlike any other activity. It is more intense than any other aspect of human interaction, and it's very much something for the long haul. Politics is a bruising game. That's why I can never understand anyone who says, well, look, you can just go into it for a short while and manage it like a business and move out again.
This is the heart of the seat of Deakin in Melbourne's eastern suburbs. It's typical middle-class Australia, and it's marginal seats like these around Melbourne that the Liberals must win if they're to take government. 7 days ago, Ian Macphee couldn't even get a game. Now, providing he wins pre-selection for Deakin, he'll be one of the star players in a team that at least is looking confident.
I really look forward with genuine excitement to the next 10 years as a result of the events of this week, when I must say before I didn't. I looked forward with considerable pessimism, but nonetheless I had the determination to try and play my part in ensuring that we had a more liberal society. Now it will be easy to do, because I'm sure there is such a determination by the whole team to work together that I'm really genuinely excited at the prospect. Our country is going through a period of great change, and how we manage that change and how we optimistically cope with change and challenge is really so important to us and to our children. And it's a very exciting time to be in Australia, culturally and economically, and a very exciting time to be in this part of the world.
The revivalist fervour of a born-again Liberal, no doubt delivered with at least half a mind for the Liberals of Deakin. The more restrained presence in that piece, of course, was our own reporter, Neil Mercer. Thanks for your company. See you next Monday at 8:30. Good night.